long, but
That's all right.
we'll figure it out.
Yeah. All right. Hey guys, Eric here with Josh. How you doing, Josh?
Ed, how are you?
Doing really well, other than the snow, but it's gone now. So, or for the most part.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. But yeah, so Josh is joining me. Mallory might be on in a few minutes. And for those of you joining us for the first time, we're the Live the Movie team, and this is our weekly Google Hangout team meeting. And what our group is really about is about a group of people that really want to live life to the fullest. And if you use the metaphor of a movie, and you think of your life as a movie and you're the main character, and if you think of a good story-based movie, the main character starts out with a goal that they want to achieve, and if they think if they achieve that goal, then they'll be successful or they'll be worthy or whatever thought they have in their head, and they go out after this goal, and usually somewhere in the movie they're kind of on track for it, and then all of a sudden they get knocked off into some sort of challenge, and in that deep challenge they reflect and realize it wasn't the goal that was going to make them the person they were meant to be. It's deciding to be that person now, and because of that, they can achieve whatever they set their mind to. And they end up achieving the goal anyway in the movie, but they do it from being who they are rather than trying to get the goal to validate who they are. So what we really are is kind of the characters in each other's movies, and we're trying to play that support role, because a lot of people go and watch a movie and they say, oh, that's great, but it's not real life, and how do you actually make stuff like that happen in real life? So we try to show you how to do that, and we do that in a few different ways. One of them is that we each pick a goal that we're going for, and we hold each other accountable to it throughout the year. The second thing is every 3 or 4 months we actually hold masterminds, and we get together and we learn these concepts, and we teach each other, and we have some fun. And they're always great to be at, because even as technology, gets better and better, we always have to be in person to be able to really have that energy and that effect. These Hangouts are awesome, but being together with people, is a good thing too. So we do have these Hangouts every week. And then the last thing we do is to be able to actually take our goals that we have and the different high-level stuff that we teach at our masterminds, and even some stuff on this Hangouts, is once a month we read a different book that's all in some way, shape, or form based on personal development. Sometimes we read like one that's like a fable, one by, say, like Robin Sharma, like The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, or The Leader Who Had No Title. So you really get a story, and you get taught some lessons, but it's through a story. Other times we read books that are autobiography type. Other times we read ones that teach a specific, 7 steps to success, or a specific, topic. Sometimes we're ones on spirituality or relationships or finances or whatever it is, but it's all based around not just principles in that area, but the personal development side on how do you actually follow through on the concepts being taught. And what's cool is all these books teach very similar concepts, and that's where you get the repetition to actually help you succeed at what you're doing. But they're different enough because they're taught by different authors in a slightly different way to actually help you still not get bored just reading over and over very similar concepts. So that's what's great about it. It reinforces the same ideas, but it also gives you the opportunity to hear from different people and get things from a different point of view. To kind of kick off, I got a little bit further in the book. I know Josh said that he kind of just got started. I'm not sure how far Mallory's gotten, but one of the things that I was reading kind of in the middle of the book is that people, when they start to read this book and stuff, they don't really understand how you can live in presence like a lot of the time, because you have so much going on. But people always say, well, when I'm in nature, I'm on vacation, just walking down the street and I have nothing to worry about, is that presence? Is that living in the now? And Eckhart says, yeah, like there's times where we all do that, no matter how crazy our lives is, no matter how much stuff's going wrong. When you're just living in the moment, you're observing things with your 5 senses, you're not thinking about stuff, and you're just taking in what's going on. That's living in the now, and that's being present. And he talks about people seem to have that happen a lot more when they're in nature, because that's, reconnecting to what's around you. There's not all kinds of noise, meaning TVs and cars and, all this stuff. There might be noise of animals or whatever, but, being in nature and stuff. So, and I was even thinking, Mal, you can share, what you might have got out of the book so far, or where you're at. But I was thinking, with your painting, when you're sitting down and you're not thinking about anything other than the scenery that you're looking to paint, and you're present and you're doing that. I don't know, but I would assume one of the reasons you love it so much is because you do go into that place of presence, and you're not thinking about all these other things other than, what you're putting on the canvas. So and I'm sure we all have those things that we do in different ways. So, so Mal, where are you at in the book? And I don't know if what I said actually makes any sense, but.
Oh, it totally does. It's kind of like what we were talking about. I think it was last week when you were talking about time, and how time from a standpoint of, you got to get to work at a certain time, you get to leave at a certain time. That sort of time is different than psychological time, right?
Yeah, that was the concept. Yep.
Yeah, so I feel like when I'm painting, I just lose total sense of time because I'm just there. Absorbing the colors, absorbing the shapes and lines, and just putting that on paper. And that's when I feel like I'm definitely at being my truest self, which is kind of a cool feeling. And I think finding that is something that, that's what people strive to do, is to find that sense of their true self. And, what can they do to have that feeling of, losing track of time, because you're just so involved in what you're doing in that present moment. And so far, I haven't got very far in the book, definitely not halfway, but what I've read so far is just fascinating how he seems to just like break down things in such a simplistic way, but it is really deep information that he's sharing. And I think that's purposeful, and that's what the book was intended to do, is to bring any reader that maybe wants to begin to learn about what he calls spiritual enlightenment. Like he says in the beginning, it just is going to plant the seed for them in the future, and maybe it will come back and something will sprout later in life for them. But it's also a great book for somebody who is a little bit more advanced on their spiritual search, which is also really cool. So I'm really excited to get in this book. I haven't gotten very far yet, but I already like it.
Cool. One of the things is that when you think about trying to find what is your mission, or what is something you really enjoy doing, last week we talked about the whole concept of, conscious action was all about, can you accept whatever you have to do? Can you be enthusiastic about it? Can you be excited about it? So is it fun? Is it something you want to do? But one of the biggest characteristics of whether something really is your mission is if you're doing something and you can't lose track of psychological time, then it's probably not the thing, and you're probably motivated by something more to do with your ego. So you might feel happy when you're doing it a little bit, but there's some ego attached to it, some outcome that you say, well, I'm doing this just so I get that. And the thing that you do that really truly is your mission, or what you're meant to do, that might be an outcome. You make money, you get an award, you do all this stuff, but that's not the focus. You're totally present. You lose track of time, and that's when you do your best work, because you're not worried about. You might plan for an outcome, but when you're actually doing it, you're just totally focused in the moment. So, Josh, you there? Any things you've got out of just going through the first chapter so far?
It seemed kind of like a little bit of a blur so far for me. I don't know, it was really hard for me to pick up on anything really specific. There's a couple of probably little pointers that I could kind of turn to.
I think one of the things too is if something you read was kind of confusing or something, it's also something we could talk about, because if someone's thinking of reading this, or they decide to join and read this, one of the things is that someone might be in the same spot too, where it's like, I don't really understand what they're talking about because I've never read this type of book, or I come from a completely religious background, and I know spirituality plays some, side role to that, but I don't see how this relates. So.
Um, yeah, it seems like he talks a lot about like identifying with your mind and all that sort of stuff, and making sure that you don't, confuse like thoughts for your personality, really. Because basically, your thoughts are just those can just sometimes come in and out of your heads, and they aren't really who you. So I don't know. I don't know if that's really powerful, but it is kind of interesting to me, just to know that we don't have to be who we think we are all the time.
I actually think it's one of the most powerful things ever, because if basically what he's getting at is, if you are your thoughts and then you go talk to someone like a doctor or therapist or something, and then they say, well, you are this, and you're like, oh, well, I can't change my thoughts. I am this. I can't change. So therefore, when you detach yourself from something, it's kind of like if you injure your leg, you don't say like, I am a broken leg, or like I am injury or something, right? You say like, some part of me is partially injured at this time, and we'll fix it. And that's kind of what he's talking about, is that your thoughts are something, but they're not you. So therefore you have the ability to change it. And what all this stuff is about is always making sure that you're in a place where you can change things. Because once you, there's a book, it's another one of our mutual friend, Jenna Barrett's favorite books. Not You Are a Badass. We read that last month, but what's the name of it? I just read it recently. Something about mindset. But the whole book is basically about the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. And a fixed mindset says that you don't play any. Something goes wrong, it's not your fault, blah, 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 it's your circumstances. And a growth mindset says, even if something really isn't your fault, you take responsibility and you're looking to see how you can move forward. And when you say, I don't control my thoughts, that automatically means you're in a fixed mindset and you're not going to do anything about it. Even if there is something wrong with you and it's really true that you do have some sort of problem and you have to figure it out, at least when you say, I'm not my thoughts, I just have this pattern, then you play some role as you get help in figuring out how to change it. So I actually think that's a very profound point that you brought up, Josh, because it's very important that people aren't told that there's nothing they can do about something. There's always something you can do. Something situation, again, might not be your fault. You didn't bring it on yourself or whatever, but there's always a way for you to move forward if you're looking for it. So you want to put yourself in that place to empower yourself to do that. But I used to think that too. Even when we were starting out, all of us in Cutco, I used to think, well, actually, believe it or not, the first time I heard Hal Elrod speak, and Hal's an amazing speaker and has an unbelievable story, but my actually response to his speech, which is an amazing speech and had nothing to do with how he gave the speech. This was just where I was at the time. The first time I heard him speak, and hearing that he got in a car accident, he almost died and had all these injuries and blah, 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 but he was happy the whole time and said, I'm going to recover. I sat there the whole time and I say, I have no problems, but I'm not happy. I wish I had a brain like his. So I was identifying with my ego that he just happened to have a brain that could think that way, and I happen to have a brain that couldn't think that way. Instead of saying, I could decide to think that way and I could develop a pattern to think like him. Therefore, if I go through a challenge, I could get a similar outcome. So I've since obviously changed that. But the first time I heard him speak, that was my thought. And that's actually what you were talking about, Josh, with that quote, is that if you identify with your thoughts, even if you hear something inspiring, you say, oh, that's great for them, but I'm not like that. You going to say something, Mel?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool what you just said, because I think anybody that maybe just joins a group like this, or and they listen to maybe something that you say, Eric, and they listen to a story that you tell about maybe a personal experience, and they think that exact same thing. It just means that you're on the right track. So it's kind of cool to think back to the mindset that we all used to have. And even though our mindsets probably varied a little bit in the specific thoughts that we had, but it is a process of growth. And as long as you're putting yourself out there and you're willing to absorb as much information as you can, and make the change in your own self and your own mind first, that's the most important thing. I wrote down, because Josh, you mentioned the whole paying attention to your thoughts is important. And I said, I wrote down, paying close attention to my thoughts is the first step to enlightenment and change, because I think awareness is key with anything. If you're aware of an issue that you want to change, or not even an issue, but maybe an area of your life that you just want to improve, being aware of that is the first step to be able to make it happen in the future. So I think this is going to be, like I said, I'm really excited to read the rest of the book. But it's definitely going to be a lot more about the mind, and how, we're not a slave to our mind. We do have control over it. It doesn't control us. And when we have a thought, we have the control and the power as a being, as a human being, to think about that thought and say, is this true? Is this true of me? Is this not true of me? And then you can dismiss it or accept it. So we have the ability to make choices like that, and no other creature has that ability. So it's just really fascinating how powerful our mind really is, in the sense that it can kind of overcome you with despair or anxiety, or some of the negative emotions that we all occasionally feel in life. But you can also use it for really, really great things, which is, the whole goal in life is to, make something great of yourself, if that, in whatever area you want to be great at. It could be being a stay-at-home mom. It could be being the CEO of a corporation. It could be owning your own business in a small town. It could be anything that you desire in your own mind, and just becoming so good at it that you're just happy and fulfilled, and you feel like you're fulfilling your purpose, and being your true self.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things I thought was most profound in this chapter was that Eckhart says that your mind is an instrument, and it's basically there to be used for a specific task, and when it's completed, you put it away. So I think that's a really good idea, good thought of like how you should separate, how much you should really think about something, or how much you should really think about whatever it is that's in front of you, or whatever, whatever thoughts that you have. And that way it's not like you never use your mind, because obviously a mind's a terrible thing to waste. It's not like you're using it so much that you start being overcome by your thoughts. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, we all have that problem sometimes with like overanalyzing things and thinking too much and whatever. And it's funny, if you observe a baby, that they only pay attention to what they're paying. They only have thoughts to deal with what they're paying attention to, and then they're on to something else, because they don't have any negative patterns that cause them to stick on something more than they need to, which is actually interesting, because if you think of that concept, which isn't necessarily related to this book specifically, but one of the things that I've thought of lately is one of the ways to not necessarily, even if you're going through a tough time with a person, whether it's a spouse, a parent, a grandparent, a friend, or whoever it is, or something, or someone, is to ask yourself the question, what is this person trying to teach me? Because I think a lot of times we always think we're right, and the ego gets a hold of us, and it's like, oh, if they could just think my way, and or I'm not going to back down on my beliefs or whatever. And it's not really about that. But if you say to yourself, what is this? Not even what is this person trying to teach me? It's like, what is the presence of this person in my life trying to teach me? They might not even be conscious they're trying to teach you something, and when you go around with everyone that you interact with and you lead with that thought, then it's a lot more easy to be able to interact with people and be present and not get worked up about things, which makes you not present, or give your energy away to people that it's just not necessary to do so. So that wasn't something I've read in this book, but I think it's very related from the sense that, we do that. Someone says something that, we don't like, and then we spend the entire time we're somewhere thinking about it, or, oh my God, is she going to be at this party? Like, I don't want to go to this party so you're not going to go to a party because the person who you don't even talk to that might say one bad thing of you is going to be there, rather than the person who invited you that you want to celebrate whatever it is that they want to celebrate. It like literally makes no sense when you say it out loud. So I just think that's a cool concept, and I don't do it all the times, but I try as much as I can to try to ask that question. And again, it's not every day, not with every person, but just in general, when, especially because sometimes people come in and out of your lives, or they're more present or less present. What is the role the person's playing in my movie? Like we're talking about, that's exactly what it is.
I was just going to add that I like the way Eckhart says we're compulsive thinkers by nature, because we really can do that whole spiral that you just talked about with like, oh, do I really want to go to this party? Like you can talk your out of things that are like totally ridiculous, but it's so real in your head. And then what, like you said, when you say it out loud, it's like, this is really ridiculous. But we do that in our own head, and we sometimes just get so wrapped up in something in our own mind, it might not even be true. And that can really cause some, negative situations to happen. And that's a lot of times what causes anxiety, which can lead to depression in some cases. So I think it's your own head every once in a while, and practicing that daily, or at least weekly to start, and then daily, and really trying to make it a point to focus on the present moment. It's huge to your overall health.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny because at one point, I think it was like right after Thanksgiving, I started getting a little bit sick, and I had tickets to go to a concert that night, and I was like, yeah, should I really go or should I rest? I mean, I'm gonna be, kind of out of it or whatever. But you know what? I got this ticket. I really like this musician that's gonna be playing tonight. I really want to go out and see him, so I'm just gonna go see him, and I'm just not gonna worry about it. And obviously, I had an awesome time, and I ended up meeting that musician, and we ended up giving each other an elbow bump at the end of the night, which was kind of fun.
Nice.
So it was really cool. And a good lesson not to get in your head too much about stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's why it's really important to have a coach, or even go see a therapist, or whatever you need to do, because in your own head you can rationalize stuff, but also when you do that, you're feeding your ego, and your ego wants more of that, so it's not going to disagree with you. So like that's what he's talking about, is like, oh, because you're trying to defend yourself. It's just like, I'm not going to go to the party because of this. One of the most interesting interventions when I went to Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny was this woman who stood up, and Tony talked to her for probably half hour, 45 minutes. But basically what it came down to was that once it was said out loud, it like literally made no sense. So when I say it out loud to you guys, which I might have even told the story before, you're gonna be like, that's so dumb, but we all do stuff like this. This woman was depressed because she didn't like being around her in-laws because they wanted to babysit her kids a lot, and bought them too much gifts, and basically spoiled her kids. So Tony was like, let me get this straight. You're depressed because your in-laws, not because they're evil or they're trying to do something. They want to spend time with you and your kids, and they want to buy your kids tons of gifts and pay for things for them. Yes, there might be a better strategy, and maybe you could talk to them about why you don't want to do those things, but that's a bad thing, and that's making you depressed and not want to associate with them. It was just like, it was longer than that, and he explained, the 6 human needs and blah, blah, blah. But then after about a half hour, she kind of opened up, because she stood up like this. And she's like crunched over like this. And Tony actually walked up to her like this, like, yeah, I have no idea what's wrong with you. Because her whole body language was like this when she would talk about her in-laws. And by the end, she was breathing and happy and laughing and all that stuff. But it's funny, like, you know, you want to say, like, you want to judge that person and be like, well, I don't do that. It's like, yeah, but we do. We all do that in some way, shape, or form. And that comes from just, you know, having these ridiculous ideas of our ego and we know the right way and whatever. And we forget the fact that the person that you're thinking about, they're probably not even thinking about that. They're just thinking about, I want to spend time with them and I worked hard so I can do that, spoil my grandkids or whatever, you know what I mean? Versus the parent is thinking, well, I need to be disciplined. I want to teach them the things that my parents didn't teach me so that they'll be happier when they're old. It's like, so you're being an example for them by being depressed based on the thing that you're telling them not to do? That doesn't make any sense.
That's so funny. Oh my goodness. It's so funny how we can warp somebody else's intention for something. Like we think that they're intentionally doing something, like, you know, somehow against us.
Well,
But
that was the thing. The woman thought
yeah,
that they were doing it on purpose to try to
yeah,
undermine their parenting.
right.
When in reality, it probably had nothing to do with that. They were just trying to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. So funny. I also think that kind of relates to, like, you kind of mentioned it, how you want to teach your kids what your parents didn't teach you. But in my mind, like, I turned out pretty decent. So whatever I thought
Yeah.
that my parents might have done wrong or I would do differently, maybe it wasn't a bad thing. Maybe it's just because I was the kid and they were the parent, and I didn't, you know, because I didn't see eye to eye with them because of that relationship doesn't mean it wasn't the right thing for a parent, you know, them and their role as a parent to do. So, I mean, I'm definitely going to take advice from my mom and dad and Ryan's mom and dad. Ryan, my husband's not too bad himself.
Well, that's why that if you read Eckhart or even Dr. Dyer, they talk about use the knowledge you have to live your life. But if you adopt this whole idea of everything happens for a reason, live the movie, you're always the answer, whatever concepts are out there, you do what you know at the time and you do the best you can, but you don't try to control the situation so much that you end up losing the whole point of why you were trying to teach something in the first place. You know what I mean? So it is true. You do the best you can, and there probably is things that you know you could teach the next generation that would be more beneficial, but it doesn't mean that, you know, everything that was, because I think we learn concepts and then we apply them to the past and see how something was wrong, but you never actually know because that's what was supposed to happen at that time. But the people that were doing that for you didn't have the knowledge you have now, so you can't go back and say, well, that was wrong then. It was actually right then. And you know, I think the biggest thing that people miss, and I know Mallory says a lot, everything happens for a reason and stuff like that, is that, and we talk about this at our mastermind. So if you join our group and come to our masterminds, I repeat this a lot, is that people never make the connection from when something goes wrong to the fact that something went wrong led you down a different path that led to something that was good. So here's an example. I just shared this a few before I did this call. So you never hear me tell this story because, I mean, I might have told you guys the story, but I never hear me tell this story because I don't like to complain about it or go, oh, no. So when I was running my first Cutco office in Watertown, I'll tell the story really short. But basically, the landlord that I had, her son basically came up to me and made up this story that he sold Cutco before for an old office in Waltham, and that he was a really good sales rep, and that I should look up his number, and I should give him a kit, and I should give him a book, and he's going to go sell to all his rich friends in town and whatever. So I did that, and I kept talking to him because I was waiting for him to turn in all these orders that he said that he had. Then, once he had talked to me a few times, he actually came up to the office with his mom down the end of the hallway and said, my mom's really busy, so I'm going to take over the responsibility of this office. So when you I'll come by once a month and you give me the check for the rent so my mom doesn't have to deal with it. And what actually went through my head is that has to be true, because if it's not true, I could walk 10 feet down the hallway and talk to his mom. And if he's lying, she'll kick his ass out of here and I'll never see him again. So there's no way he could be lying. It's just not even possible. So then he comes by a couple weeks later. I give him the check. The first of the month passes by. The 7th of the month comes. And the mom calls and it's like, what are you doing? We're going to have to evict you, like, unless you come up with the money. And I told her I gave the money to the son. And she says, oh, you can't give the money to my son. My son's a liar and a cheater and he steals. And it's like you had him in you had him in the office. Like you were standing right next to him. How would you allow someone in your property if you knew that about them? But anyway, it's not the point of the story. So here I am. This is where most people would stop and say, this was a terrible thing that happened. Now follow this story. So what ends up happening is, so I ran that office and I realized that I didn't have the skill that I thought I did, but I had a lot of potential. So my manager actually called me and we had a meeting and he said, hey, you worked really hard. It really didn't work out. It means you don't have the skill set yet. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take you under my wing as an apprentice for the next 8 months. We're going to close your office. You'll go back out and run your own, franchise style business the next summer and you'll crush it. Here's the interesting thing though, is that if he didn't take the check from me, my office probably would have stayed open a month longer. You're like, well, it would have been the same outcome. You would have closed your office. But in that month, the division manager would have picked someone else for the pilot manager position. If he did that, I would have quit. If I quit, I wouldn't have gone back to my office where my wife was actually also working there, which means I never would have dated her, got married, and had a 6-month-old. And my best friend from college, who also a best friend from Cutco, who are dating right now and live together in Florida, who met at our wedding, that would have never happened if this guy didn't steal money from me. So explain to me how that's a bad thing again. So that's the type of stuff, is that you use the information that you have to make the best decision you can make. And I'm not saying that if someone steals money from you tonight, you should not be like worried about it or like not be upset. That's not what I'm saying. It's that you take a period, it all comes back to the whole concept of how long do you focus on the problem and how quickly do you focus on finding a solution, knowing that some point down the line, not only is the challenge going to be something that you by overcoming the challenge you grew, but the actual thing that happened forced you to look at things in a different way and take a different path, which leads to some outcome that you never would have even have gotten to if you didn't have that thing happen, which therefore, in the way I think, that's actually a positive thing that happened. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, but.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when you're in the middle of those things, you don't really realize the impact that they'll have on your future. But then when you look back and you can say, that happened because, if that didn't happen, like you just said, this wouldn't have happened, this wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't even be where I am today. You wouldn't be with Meg, you wouldn't have your baby. It's just like crazy. So when the lesson that I learned from that too is whenever you're going through something really tough, it's like, okay, this sucks right now. But there's got to be something that's going to come from this that's going to change my life in a good way, because why else would I be going through this much, this big of a challenge? So it's good. It's encouraging because we all go through challenges. We all have something crazy happen to us that's like unexplainable in the moment. But then it's like, okay, 10 years from now, this might be a good thing. You don't know what that is at the time, but.
And that's the thing, is that if you're looking for the lesson, you'll find it. If you're not looking for it, you probably won't, unless you then get around a group like this sometime in the future and reflect back. Otherwise you won't on your own. But that's why you hear the quote, and it is, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, because when you lay out your life as a cookie cutter thing, then there's no lessons there. There's no lessons. There might be challenges, but you say, well, this will happen exactly then, and then I'll overcome it in this way. But then that's not really a challenge if you already know how to overcome it and you're just do it. And that's the whole concept, is that, I think to empower yourself to not have the fixed mindset and to have the growth mindset, you have to see that there's always a lesson in everything. Ask those questions. What is this person's presence in my life trying to teach me? Even if something wasn't my fault, like the guy stealing the money from me, like from that, there was no way for me to take responsibility for that situation in the moment. Like there was nothing I could do because I actually had a thought about that. I said, there's no way he could be doing this to me because I could just go ask the mother right now and he'd be kicked out of here. But even though it's not your fault, you still take the responsibility from that to move forward. But if you have the fixed mindset, you say, well, the reason I didn't succeed is because of this. And even though great things came after, if that didn't happen, things would be better, or I would trust people more, or I would, blah, 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 blah. But that's irrelevant. It's you can't have one without the other. So therefore, it's got to be a net positive thing. And for someone to figure out what the positive thing is from the situation, you think about, Eckhart talks about being present. Dr. Dyer talks about that stuff. But even if you think about, like when I go to my chiropractor and stuff, and at the last mastermind, we talked about the 12 stages of healing from that network spinal analysis. That whole concept is that, so those when the chiropractor does the thing where they touch you in certain ways to align your spine, but also when they do it to relieve negative patterns, what they're actually trying to help you do is to let go of the energy related to things from your past. And if you believe it or not, a lot of the stresses in your back and your spine, or even the stress in your body, is not reconciling stories like that. Still, we all have those from the past, whether it's an association with a person or a thing or a situation, where we say we're over it, but we don't address it, or we say that it is a net positive, but we don't actually really believe that. And what's interesting is you say, what does that have to do with the power of now and being present? Well, there's one thing, there's the act of working on being present, but also those are the things that keep you from being present, unaddressed issues, and not taking the time to reconcile things, and forcing yourself to not have that unresolved issues. Because once you resolve some of those things, it's easier to be present, because you don't have this negative energy that's stuck inside of you, allowing you to actually do these things that they're talking about in these books. And that's why everything's so related, whether it's a massage, chiropractor, being present, doing certain exercises, praying, going to church, whatever it is, it's all related to get to the same point where you say, I'm here for a reason. I'm going to find something that puts me in the present moment to do what I'm meant to do. There's different strategies, and those are some I've told you, but that's what it ultimately comes down to.
I love these topics that we get to talking about that are, they're basic topics from this book, but it's like you tell so many personal stories, and we give examples of certain situations that all of us can learn from. And we wouldn't have had these conversations if we didn't have this group, for one thing, and didn't read these books. So it's proof that, these groups, I look forward to this call every week. When Sunday night rolls around, I'm like, all right, tomorrow's Monday, I gotta go to work, but then I get to be on a call. So it's just cool to think that, even though once a week, it's like, okay, is it really making that much of a difference? But it has. I mean, I'm definitely a lot, more positive throughout the rest of the week after these calls, and looking for different ways to implement certain things that we talked about on the call. So it's just so cool, the things that we dive into that we wouldn't, I wouldn't normally talk about this to really anybody besides my husband, and we don't see each other enough, or we see each other a lot, but we don't see each other and spend time like this together, where it's like, okay, let's talk a little bit deeper, instead of saying, hey, how was your day? What's going on this week for you, kind of thing. So
right. Absolutely. So one of the interesting things is that we talk about with this group, and I'll kind of lead into wrapping up with this concept, is I actually kind of thought of this, and I don't know if it's a quote from somewhere, but most people try to look for how to get a bunch of strategies in a short period of time to get them where they want to go, instead of a few strategies over a long period of time to get them where they want to go. And I'll give you an example, and a lot of the ones I usually give are, you know, money related, because I think that even if you're not a money person in terms of the way you think, it's so simple to you know, think about this stuff. There's an author, David Bach. He's written some books like The Automatic Millionaire and The Smart Couples Finish Rich and stuff. And his principles are so simple, it's like ridiculous. But he sold millions and millions of books. And one of them you guys have probably heard, because I think Dave Ramsey teaches it too now, but he probably copied it from David Bach, is the concept of the latte factor, which is, you say you have no money to save because you get a paycheck, you spend it on all these different things, but you go and get a Starbucks and a muffin every morning that's $5, when you could make your own coffee for 20 cents and save that $5 without hampering anything else that you're doing in your life. And the point of it is, you say, you know, the whole point and why it's such a profound concept is that someone says, great, that's $5. You're proving to me that I can save some money, but what does that have to do with becoming a millionaire? But the thing about it is, if you saved $5 a day, if you save $5 a day for 30 years at a 10% interest rate, you'd have over $1 million. And people think, oh my God, I have to like save $1 billion. You know, I have to save $500 out of my paycheck every month for the rest of, rest of forever. And, you know, I'll never make it there or whatever. So how does that relate to this concept is, $5 a day is something small, and not getting the Starbucks and the muffin and just taking that money and putting it aside is like one action. So it's one strategy and one action that could literally turn you into a millionaire, but it's over 30 or 35 years. There's other strategies, obviously, if you want to speed that up, but that's what it's all about. And the thing is, when you think about a group like this, it's like, yeah, I've heard these principles before, but I'm hearing them in a different way. And over time, you never know what one idea that you attach to sends you down a little bit different path that really helps you make that shift, that $5 shift or whatever it is, that over time, makes a big difference. The guy in the book talks about, he says he actually had two women come and visit him, because before teaching financial education, he actually was a financial advisor. And he said he actually had two women come in, and they were 51 and 52. They had the exact same job at the exact same company for their entire careers. And one of them had a fourth of the other one in terms of how much money they had. And one of the women actually retired, and the other one had to work for 10 more years, actually got laid off from two different jobs and is still struggling. And the difference was, one basically did their latte factor. They figured out where do they waste money, and instead of wasting it, they saved it. And the other person didn't. But pretty much other than that, they made the same amount of money. They had the same friends. They did the same amount of things. But their outcome was so completely different. And it comes back to the golf analogy we talk about all the time. When you hit the golf ball, if you hit it in the center, it goes straight. If you hit it slightly right, as you go out 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, you're in the woods this way. If you hit it 1 millimeter to the left, you're send it out 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, you're in the woods the other direction. And that's just an example of that. And the point is, that's what this group could do. You know, in the short run, you might not notice that difference, but over time, it'll really help you get to that next level. So that's what I have for you guys tonight. I don't know if you guys have any other things to share, excitement to be a part of the group, or how the books relate to keeping you motivated or anything like that. But yeah, excited to to continue this. And one of the goals I have for the group for starting 2017 is to expand the group, because I think we've done a good job, our group here, of getting it down, of reading the books and having the masterminds and all this stuff. And we don't have to have this huge group where it's this big business thing, but if we can get some more people involved and share what's going on, I think that would be awesome. So that's definitely something I'm trying to focus on as we head into the new year.
And I think that will be beneficial too for not only for the people that could potentially join, that will join in 2017, but for us too. I mean, two minds are definitely greater than one, three minds are greater than two, but at the same time, it's like we've learned a lot from each other, and a lot of the stuff that we are teaching and, talking about, especially on these calls, is a lot of similar stuff. So it's good that we have the book to guide us through different conversations, but it'd be better to have more people with new ideas. Everybody has such different and unique thought patterns and ideas that they can contribute that we can all learn from. So
Absolutely.
That's exciting too.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get some more of my friends. I know a couple of my coworkers were trying to get on the calls and watch the replays and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens with that.
Cool. Because I mean,
Trying to invite a few more.
yeah, I mean, the whole
So-
concept is if we're all getting value out of it, then you put it out there to people, and if they join, great. If they don't, they're not ready for it, that's okay too. So that's that's kind of the concept, especially what Eckhart and Dr. Dyer teach is you say, well, how does spirituality, how does that have anything to do with the fact that you sold like 2 million books? Like, isn't that like an ego thing? It's like, well, the way they look at it is they say, I was meant to write this book because something came through me and I needed to share it. Who decided to grab a hold of it is up to them. I played my part, but if someone was ready for it, they're going to pick up the book. If they're not ready for it, they're not going to pick up the book. So same thing. If someone's ready to join, they'll join. If not, that's okay too. We just want to play our part to do that. So I'm excited to continue the book. I know you guys will get a lot further into it by next week, and excited for that as well. And as always, live the movie. We'll see you guys next Monday. Enjoy the rest of your week. Hopefully there's not too much snow, but we'll talk
Hopefully
to you.
there is.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking that. All right. I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye, guys.
See ya.
All right, see you guys.